Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of Mystic Space podcast. Today we are going to be talking about health, my journey of health, and why health is important. I'm sure most people do know the importance of health and what is health. However, I'm going to be diving deep a little bit into how different it is to actually be healthy in this society. What it truly means to be healthy, because I think a lot of people think that they're being healthy, and unfortunately, just because of our society and the way that we've been taught and what is considered normal to us, unfortunately, is not actually very healthy. Now, first of all, I would like to make a little disclaimer to say that I am obviously not a doctor. This is just my own personal opinion and from all the research that I have done. As I always say to every single person, always do your own research and make up your own mind. I believe that knowledge is power, and when we're empowered with that, I feel like we are more likely to make changes in our lives. Now, in today's episode, we are going to be talking mostly about physical health. However, I do believe that mind-body-spirit connection is so important, and our mental health is also so important for our physical health. They say that the number one killer is actually stress. Mostly because stress causes inflammation in our body, and inflammation is kind of the root cause of all of our issues. But I'll be diving into that on another episode, because right now we're just going to be talking about physical health. The reason why I've called this podcast episode Health is Wealth is because that is one of my new favorite sayings when it comes to health, because we don't truly understand how important health is until it's taken away from us, right? Like on our day-to-day base, we are stressed about money, finances, and all of these other things in this society and this world that, we are forced to care about and that we are forced to stress about. But it's not until you're forced to care about your health that you realize that none of those other things matter. So firstly, let's dive in a little bit more into my health journey. So I did touch on my first episode a little bit about my health journey because it is what kind of brought upon my spiritual awakening, but we're going to go into it a little bit more in detail. One of the first health problems I had most of my life, I remember this from when I was literally a child, was having migraines. I remember even in high school, I was so close to like almost failing high school because I was absent a lot. And that was really hard for me, not even just in school, but also after school, having something like that, I wasn't just like, one migraine here and there, like once a month. Like I was constant, like a few times a week. Sometimes my migraines would even last 7 days. And obviously with that was really hard to keep and maintain a job because most employers don't really want somebody who's that unreliable and that's going to be calling in sick that often. So working made it really difficult, and I had no idea what was causing my migraines. When I was younger, like as a teen, they did put me on lots of different trials for migraine preventatives and things like that I would take like every day, or like as soon as I would get a migraine, I would take a pill to help it go away. And all of those things were really like short-lived. Like sometimes they would work for like a very short period of time and then they would stop working, or they ended up having really bad side effects, so I would get off them. I never really solved my migraine issues until the last few years. I honestly remember my first migraine, I was probably like 6 or 8 years old, I remember, and ever since then I just remember constantly suffering with migraines. And if you've ever suffered with a migraine before, if you've ever had a migraine before, or if you deal with chronic migraines, then you know how debilitating it is to have a migraine, to even try to function, let alone, live your normal life, have a job, all those other things. I did try some things for my migraines, like, cutting out sugar, cutting out coffee, cutting out chocolate and things like that along the way, and nothing that really like actually made an impact. Some things did seem to make things better for, again, a short period of time, but it also just always seemed like no matter what I did, my migraines would just be there, which I laugh about now, but it sucks having a migraine. I was also diagnosed when I was about 20 or 21 years old with PCOS. I have had hormonal issues my whole life. I was thrown on the pill when I was 15 years old because of my irregular periods and because of the pain that I was in. I was not tested for anything. I was not asked any questions. I was basically just thrown on a contraceptive pill, and I personally don't think that helped my issues. Contraception for women blocks and stops our hormones. It stops our natural cycle. It stops our natural rhythm of our body. And they are now finding that the root cause of PCOS, endometriosis, and all of these other things are actually hormone imbalance, which is caused by an array of things, which I will get into. So my full health journey started when I was at work and I suddenly started getting a really sharp pain. And it was sudden, and I was honestly in shock because it felt like I died. Like it felt like something had bursted inside me, and it was on the same side as my appendix. So I was like, is it a cyst? Is it my ovary? Is it my appendix? I wasn't sure. I was at a really toxic job at that point, and I was on the floor, and I had told my manager, and she was like, make sure you come back because we're really busy. That's the type of environment I was working at, which obviously made everything more stressful, but let's not get into that in this episode. I obviously did not end up going back out on the floor. I went out the back and I was literally laying down and I was in agony. I ended up going straight to the hospital from there, actually, where I began my insufferable search of what the fuck is going on with me and what the fuck is happening to my body. At that point, they basically found nothing. They said it could be my appendix, it could not. It could be PCOS, it could not. It could be endometriosis. They're not sure because I hadn't had a laparoscopy at that point. Basically, I got sent home with just painkillers, had to go back and forth. I was at the hospital so many times throughout this year. I basically had to push to get my appendix removed because that was kind of like the only thing that they thought could have been the problem, and I was still in pain. I literally couldn't even stand. I was getting shocking pain from that side down to my leg, and I couldn't function. I couldn't work. I ended up having to quit my job later. So I ended up having to fight for them to remove my appendix because at that time that was the only thing that they thought could be wrong. And they have to do a laparoscopy to actually confirm endometriosis, unfortunately, because that's just a system we live in. There's no test or anything that can be done, unfortunately, besides that surgery. So they decided that they were going to take out my appendix and also, check me for endometriosis. So I ended up getting my appendix removed. They diagnosed me with endometriosis, and ever since then, I was still in so much pain. It was hard to stand. I struggled working. I had so many issues at work, going back and forth with the doctor, trying to get like medical certificates, trying to show that like I can't work anymore, like full days. I can't do the same hours as I was doing because I couldn't do it. I would come home and cry because I was in so much pain, and I would try to push myself to work. Now, I did touch on the last episode how, all of this physical problems started making my mental health problems worse, which I don't think helped my physical problems. It's kind of like a whole horrible vortex of a circle that you kind of get spun into because obviously, if your mental health is not good, you can't really take care of your physical and all of that sort of stuff. So my physical was impacting my mental so bad. I was having anxiety attacks at work every single day because I was so anxious of being there. I was so anxious of being in pain. I was so anxious of being judged for being in pain and, all the issues that was coming up at my work because I was in pain and I wasn't able to work. I was like, am I going to lose my job? I was freaking out, all of that sort of stuff. So I ended up quitting my job because I literally couldn't handle it anymore. And I was still undergoing tests. I ended up having a histoscopy where they diagnosed me with Ashermans Syndrome, which I had no idea what the hell Ashermans Syndrome was. I have heard of PCOS and endometriosis, but Ashermans Syndrome, what? And I was like, do I really need another fucking diagnosis right now? But basically it's when the inside of your uterus, just imagine like a spider web on the inside of your uterus. So like your uterus wall is like attaching to other sides of a uterus wall, kind of creating like a spider web inside. So they had to burn all of those off. Obviously that causes pains as well because that can like pull and contract on your uterus, can make it hard for like your uterus lining to shed and all those sort of things. At the same time of my histoscopy though, I ended up getting the IUD inserted because this is what my gynecologist recommended me and was kind of like, this is kind of like the last source that we have. This is like the last thing that we can do for you, basically, because other than that, we don't know what to do besides having a hysterectomy, which is something that I was fighting for at that time because I thought that was my only way out. I was like, okay, you can just take out my ovaries, you can just take out my uterus, and I won't have any of these issues. Like, how great, right? But that was also a whole different like rabbit hole of the fact that, women's rights kind of really suck. And it's not really my choice to have it done because I unfortunately don't have children. I don't want children, and not having children and wanting a hysterectomy is very hard because doctors are not really willing to perform that because they're afraid that you're going to regret it later, because unfortunately that does happen to a lot of women out there, and it kind of really sucked. So I wasn't able to get a hysterectomy. I was trying with different gynecologists. I ended up having really bad issues with one gynecologist. I cannot believe that this person is even in the medical field. Because they basically said to me that they would never take away something that makes me a woman. Anyway, that's like a whole different rabbit hole we're not going to get into, but you know, just know that our system kind of sucks for women, and it's not just easy for me to just go get a hysterectomy, which at the same time, I'm kind of glad, because right now I wouldn't be getting one. So I am very grateful that I didn't end up getting one at that time, but I did think that that was my only way out of this at that time. So my gynecologist wanted to see how I would feel on the IUD and to give that a bit of a trial and to see if that helped anything. And then if not, we were going to proceed to potentially some sort of a partial hysterectomy or a full hysterectomy. Let me just say the IUD was the worst thing that I could have ever done because that was horrible. I was in so much pain and I bled for, I want to say 3 to 4 months straight. I went back to them and I wanted to get it taken out, but you know, they said we have to give it more time. You know, your body can take a while to get used to it. So I think at about the 4-month mark, I was like, okay, this is enough. Please get this out of me, because I was in pain and I was constantly bleeding, and that's just not fun. So I got the IUD taken out, and it was at this point where I kind of started to think I want to go down a more natural path. So I thought, hey, since I think I was 26 at the time, 25, something like that, and I have been on the pill since I was 15, I was like, I've been on hormonal contraception for over 10 years now. So I would love to just see what my body could do naturally. You know, I just don't think it's normal that we put all of these, you know, fake hormones and things like that that completely change and alter our bodies for that long and not have some sort of consequences, I guess, for that. So I wanted to be able to give my body that time to just be without anything external to it, which is what led me down my path to go see a naturopath and to start healing naturally, which is something I am beyond grateful I did, because now I am here and feel completely different than I did a few years ago. So when your health gets taken away from you, it honestly just feels like your whole world is collapsing. You feel helpless, you feel stuck, you feel like this is what it's going to be like forever, and you honestly don't know what to do, because you've also put your trust in these medical professionals who, you know, you hope can help you, and unfortunately a lot of them cannot with a lot of instances like this, a lot of cases like this, because unfortunately they only know how to mask the symptoms and not actually get down to the root cause of the issues, which is what I loved seeing my naturopath for. So seeing my naturopath, she told me that there was a few foods that I needed to cut out of my diet, basically because they're inflammatory. And having things like PCOS, endometriosis, and things like that, it's because of a highly inflammatory diet, because our bodies are not alkaline like they used to be. A lot of the foods and everything that we are putting into our body is creating our body to be very acidic. When our body is very acidic, it creates a lot of mucus, a lot of inflammation. And that is actually the root cause of a lot of illnesses and diseases. Just kind of like think of it as you're a plant. And if you're feeding that soil that the plant is sitting in very like acidic, you know, substances, and it's not used to that, or it's not made for that, it's going to start to wilt. It's going to start to die. It's kind of like the same things with our cells in our body. Our cells and everything in our body cannot function properly, cannot thrive properly unless it's operating at its optimal health. And for that to happen, it needs to be in an alkaline state. It needs to be in a healthy environment. One of my favorite things I like to give as an analogy, we are like a machine. Every little cell in our body is doing its own function. And you have to understand this on a much broader scale than what we've been taught. Like a liver doesn't know that it's a liver, right? It's just being a liver. All those little cells are just doing what they know to do, and that's it. Those cells need specific things to be able to do their job correctly. Whether it's a liver, whether it's a brain, whether it's the heart, whether it's the stomach, whether it's the intestines, it doesn't matter. And the problem is we are literally feeding our bodies poison and toxins and all of these things that are causing it to be in dis-ease, be in a place where it is not in harmony anymore, where our body is not in harmony anymore. Those cells are not in harmony anymore with themselves and with the rest of our body, because again, it's a machine. Every little part of your body is working its own little thing, but also overall working together. And this is why I love the holistic approach to healing, because you are looking at the root problem of things, and you're looking at everything from like a really scientific point of view. Like, this is exactly what the liver needs to function. This is exactly what the heart needs to function. Whereas I feel like modern medicine is a lot of covering up symptoms, and that's just because unfortunately, modern medicine is a part of Big Pharma. And not to mention the fact that unfortunately that industry is just to make money. Because, if everyone was to become healthy, we wouldn't need to depend on them anymore. And we wouldn't need to buy their medications anymore. Because I truly believe that there are people out there that have come up with cures to a lot of illnesses and diseases, even things like cancer, or ways to be able to prevent or to reverse a lot of things that we suffer with. However, they are being silenced. Because I truly don't believe they want you to have this information. I don't believe they want you to feel empowered and to actually be healthy, because then you are not dependent on them. But anyway, that's a whole other conspiracy theory rabbit hole that I won't get into right now. So unfortunately, we have been tricked, lied, and deceived by our society and by these people that we trust, because we are shown that it is so normal to eat a lot of foods that have colors, additives, preservatives, refined sugar, chemicals, food colorings, and all of these things that again cause disease within the body because they're not natural to us. It's like feeding a cat just fruits and then being surprised why they're sick, because their body is not meant for that. They need certain nutrients, certain amino acids from meat or from their diet that they're supposed to have. Now, humans are not supposed to eat packaged foods. This is not natural to us. We are not made for this. Our cells are not made for this. And this is why it causes inflammation in the body. Because imagine how stressed your cells are within you, because they don't know how to function with this. They don't know how to process this. And we've just been taught that just because we can eat it and still be alive and still seem okay, then it must be fine. But that is so incorrect. This is why so many people are getting health problems later down the track. So just because you eat bad, but you may look healthy or you might even seem healthy right now, doesn't mean that that is always going to be the case. Just because you're standing and you seem alive doesn't necessarily mean that your body is thriving. And personally for me, I want to be able to grow old and still be healthy. Like, I want to be 70, 80 and be a fucking badass. Like, I want to be able to do handstands. I want to go for hikes and things like that. Like, I don't want to be like everybody else when they're already in their 50s, 60s with so many health issues. And it's just increasing more and more. Like, we've all heard about the huge increase in diabetes, in people who are becoming overweight, who are having health issues such as heart problems and all of these other things, like women getting diagnosed with PCOS and endometriosis. Like, how many women do you know that have these sort of issues? Like, it is so common, but it's so overlooked and just so normalized that nobody stops to think, hey, this is not how we actually should be. Even in regards to women's health, we are so different as a woman than a man. Like, we have 4 phases of our cycle. We run completely different than a man. And I'm going to get into another episode on this, specifically talking about the phases of our cycle as a woman and how to start living intuitively and how to start actually living in accordance to your cycle rather than society and the way it was made, which was not made for you. But we're literally told that period pains are normal, and they're actually not. It's actually not normal to be debilitating in pain on your period, and it's definitely not normal to have pains outside of your period and to have all of these other issues that occur because of your bleed. I truly believe that all of these signs, all of these symptoms are things that our body are showing us. They're signs. They're things that our body is trying to scream out at us. Hey, something is going on. Something is wrong. And it's up to us to either just ignore it, mask it, and chuck a pill on it, and hopefully it goes away. Or for us to turn around and go, hey, you know what? I honor and I respect this body, and I really want to find out what the problem is, because I deserve to be healthy and I want to live a good life. And I'm personally not having children, but if you're having children, you might want to be healthy for your child. You might want to be there so that you can grow old while they're still around, so that you can see them have their own children and things like that. So I heard this, and I might be wrong, so please correct me if I am, that there are actually generations now who are living less than their parents. And I think that's really sad. I think that's honestly a huge wake-up call for us as humans. Like, what's going on? And it's not even our fault as individuals. Again, because we are shoved these things. We are told these things for our doctor. Oh, everything in moderation. Period pains are normal. We see on commercials constantly things for food that is not good for us. And I can tell you, as somebody who's gone there and has cut out sugar and has cut out a lot of things like that, you get so much backlash from people because it's not normal in our society to be healthy. And that's really weird to me. But when you tell people that you don't consume sugar, they look at you like you're crazy, which is one thing that I really want to touch on this. Refined sugar has been shown that it can be more addictive than cocaine. And I think that alone should scare the shit out of a lot of people, especially because we are feeding these things to our children. Like, how many children, even from like the age of 2 or 3, get chocolates and cakes and party cakes and all of these sort of things. And it's not even just like the cookie itself. You need to look at the ingredients. Half of the time, the crackers that you are giving them are horrible. The cereals that you give them, the bread, everything has so many hidden ingredients. And again, it's not your fault because you were not taught to look for these things. You were not taught to care about health or ingredients. Instead, they were shoving down your throat for you to care about calorie counting and all this other crap, which doesn't actually fucking matter, because you can eat a bar that has 4 calories but 300 ingredients. So you gotta pick your poison there. So again, we weren't really taught what was actually healthy for us. I'm sure we all got taught some form of that pyramid that I honestly remember only in like primary school, where it like shows you what you should be eating the most of, like being at the bottom and then the least of at the top. And it's not necessarily just the refined sugar, it's all the artificial colorings and flavorings and enhancers and everything like that that is in the food. I know a lot of people say, oh, our parents and our generations before us, they ate all of these things and they were fine. But you also have to think about the quality of food compared to back then. How many ingredients were in most of their meals were very little. They didn't eat a lot of processed and packaged foods like crackers, chips, all of that sort of stuff. And everything else that they did consume had a lot less ingredients. It was very basic. Didn't really have all of these preservatives and numbers and colorings and flavorings that they used to add in their food. And the quality of food has gone down a lot as well. I am personally someone who doesn't eat meat, but let's just say meat as an example. The quality of meat back then was so different because it was just some guy that had a cow on his farm and, ended up butchering him and killing him and eating him. Whereas now it's like they're raised on a farm with so many other cows, and they're fed all these other things, and they're injected with hormones, and they're all of these other things that they're doing and eating. And like even the meat itself, I've heard so many things about people using meat glue and all these other things to make the meat look better. Like, the quality is just not the same. And this is why there's such a huge rise in so many illnesses and diseases, because our food is not made for our bodies. Our cells literally doesn't know what to do with it. So the more we consume these foods, the more we put our body in misalignment, in a place where it's not harmony, and it's not working with itself, it's not working with each other, and it's not working in a place that is actually where it's supposed to be. And the more we eat like this and consume foods that are poison to us and toxins and creating illnesses and disease within our body, the more we are going to suffer. And I don't think it's just us that suffers, it's everyone around us. We are teaching our children to eat this way because we unfortunately don't know any better. And again, that is not your fault at all, and it's not my fault, and it's not anybody's fault, because again, our system has let us down. And this is why I say it's so important to take your power back. Do your own research. Take your power into your own hands. Don't give up on yourself, and find other options. Keep an open mind, because there are so many other things out there than what you've just been told can help you. And those things are usually what are called alternate. And that's something else I would like to get into. To me, I don't understand why we call it alternate, because that was the initial medicine. Herbs, everything like that, they were the initial medicine. Western medicine has actually only been around for a very, very short period of time compared to everything else. I'm sure we've all heard of Chinese medicine. I'm sure we've all heard of people using herbs to heal things instead of painkillers or instead of pills. And that's because I truly believe that our beautiful planet has everything we need. There are so many herbs out there that help with so many things. I'm not going to get into it all now because there's just so much. But you need to remember that these herbs and these practices have been around for hundreds and thousands of years and have worked. I'm not saying that you need to ditch Western medicine and that you need to only approach everything in a holistic way, because I'm not saying that there's anything bad with Western medicine. I'm not one of those people that are against it. I truly believe that there is a time and place for it, and I really do appreciate it, because obviously you're going to break a bone or you need a major surgery. it's amazing that we have this technology now and that we have the resources to be able to do things like that. But I don't think Western medicine truly understands our body to its core yet. And I know it can be hard. And I know this can all be very overwhelming, and there can be so much to think about because you're just gobsmacked at the fact that you thought you were being healthy and you thought you were doing what you were supposed to be doing because that's what you were told to do, and that's what everyone else around you is doing and what is perceived as normal. So when you go down this path, it can be really scary, it can be really lonely, and it can be very overwhelming because a lot of people around you are probably not going to understand. It's not a very supportive society to live in, especially if you live in the Western world, especially with all the temptations around, and that everybody really connects through food as well. Like, you go out and you eat and things like that. And that can be really hard because, you're not eating the same things that you were eating before. And this is not to say you need to be restrictive and fully cut out everything and go crazy raw 100% vegan or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all because I'm definitely not there. I think it's about learning to have a healthy relationship with yourself, with your body, and with food, to really truly learn to care about your body more than just what society has taught you. And I will go into how to create a better relationship with food in another episode because that's something that I struggled with for a very long time. And I'm very glad that I've gotten to a place where I'm now intuitively eating and eating a lot healthier without feeling guilt and without feeling like I'm restricting and without feeling like all this crap that comes with making such big changes in your life. So the first thing I want to suggest is to take it slow. Be realistic. If you think you can cut out absolutely everything that is not good for your body and that is causing you inflammation and pain and disease and everything like that, and you can cut that all out right now and not have a problem with it, of course, go ahead and do that. But for me, I think that's just unrealistic, especially if you've had previous problems with food and eating disorders and things like that. That might not always be ideal or the best way to go about it. So I think it's important to stay realistic and start off small. Just start off with simple things. For me personally, I don't even worry about what I'm cutting out. It's more about what I want. So I'm choosing to eat a more whole foods and I'm already plant-based diet. And I just want you to remember that this is not your fault, and I don't want you to feel guilty and bad and overwhelmed and like a failure or anything like that, because it's so unfair that, we're just not taught these things. And I think this is really important information, and this is why I'm going to be studying to become a herbalist and a naturopath. And that's not necessarily so that I can have my own practice and be a naturopath in that sort of way. It's so that I can make content online and share the information with you guys, because I think it's important, and I think everybody deserves to have this information. I think everybody deserves to have the true knowledge of how our body works and what's actually good to keep us healthy. And another thing I would love to say is please don't wait until it's too late, because unfortunately that's kind of just how our human brain can work sometimes. And again, it's not your fault, it's just kind of like how we work, right? We don't realize how much we miss something until it's gone. You don't realize how happy you are to not have a blocked nose or a cough until you have a cough and you're like, oh, I just wish this to be gone, right? It's kind of a part of who we are to be like that. But with our health, that is something that is so important, and sometimes we can reverse a lot of the things, right? We can kind of go back and help ourselves. But sometimes, unfortunately, we can create so much illness and disease in our body that it gets to a point where there's kind of no turning back, or that it's very hard to turn back. And I'm not saying that it's ever impossible, because I truly believe that, miracles happen every day, and there are people out there that are reversing things that they are told that are never going to reverse. I've heard stories of people who have literally said that they had months to live and then have ended up living for years and years and years after that. So it can happen, but it's obviously a lot more difficult. And I don't want you to have to get to that point for you to turn your life around, because it's possible to do now, and it's possible to do in small steps, and it's not something that can be done overnight for, again, most people. If you can do everything overnight, fantastic. Honestly, I would love to be able to do that. Because I'm still on my journey. I'm not perfect. I'm not saying that I never consume anything that, is quote unquote bad for my body. I don't really like saying good and bad, because I think that just gets taken out of context. But really it's just about something that negatively impacts your body or positively impacts your body. But I think it's important that everyone is educated and has this knowledge and is able to make the decisions for themselves. I know that most people know that sugar and all of that sort of stuff is bad for us. I'm not saying that most people don't know that, because we do. We know that sugar and drinks and food that, is oily and fatty and all of that sort of stuff is not good for us. We all know that, But I also don't think we understand the really true impact it has to consume those foods. I don't think we really truly understand because, again, a lot of the times it's not immediate. We don't have sugar and then we're immediately sick or we immediately get diagnosed with diabetes or whatever it is. These are things that come later in life and then, we end up getting really surprised, oh my gosh, why? I thought I was healthy, or we end up blaming genetics, which is actually beautiful because a lot more research is coming out to show that only about less than 1% of illnesses and diseases are actually genetic, and the rest actually comes from environment. And I think with that information, that is really fucking profound because we've kind of been stuck in this victim mentality of, oh, well, my mom has breast cancer, so I'm gonna get it. My mom has this, or my dad has this, or my grandparents had this, so that means I'm going to have that. And that's just not the case. And I think that's really fucking powerful and really amazing because that just shows that we're not destined to this horrible life or destined to failure, because we actually can change our lives around and we can control our health. We don't have to be this powerless victim to everything else around us. Anyway, I hope this episode has encouraged you to look a little bit deeper within yourself and to care a little bit more about your health and what you're putting into your body. Because I think this vessel that we got given is really fucking beautiful and really important that we take care of it. Because at the end of the day, it's only going to make you feel better, more energetic, more aligned with yourself, more healthy. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mystic Space Podcast, and I'll see you in my next one. Blessings.